Hola, hola, familia. Welcome back to Tech and Tequila, the podcast where we talk about the tech you need, the systems you build, and of course, the lifestyle you actually want to live, all with a little bit of tequila. I'm your host, Kat Lopez Shelby, your techie chica, founder of Shelby Technology Solutions, and of course, co-creator of Your Digital Bliss. And today's conversational, well, this is a personal one. Because what's the point of building system? What's the point of scaling revenue? And what's the point of optimizing your tech stack if your nervous system is fried, whichever way you want to say it, right? Because we're all here for it. And your life feels cramped. So today we're talking about creating space, whether that's space in your calendar, space in your nervous system, space in your life. And I could not think of a better person to have this conversation with than the co-creator. I would like to say my sole collaborator, man, words are hard today. And of course, mi amiga, the lifestyle architect herself, Dr. Jenna W. Clack. So thank you, Dr. Jenna, for joining us.
I'm excited to be here, Kat.
Well, before we get into what I like to call the carne and the papas section of this, we have to talk about tequila, because what is tech and tequila without a little bit of tequila? And while for those who can't tell and you're not able to see this, I'm a little bit of a red-nosed Mexicana today. I'm a little feeling under the weather. So while I will not be taking any shots or drinking any tequila on this episode, I did want to talk about a tequila brand that I was recently introduced to that I am so excited about. And that is Tequila de la Gente. Now, in case you're wondering, it is because it is like the trifecta of things that I love. I love tequila. I love Latino-owned business. And I love things that come out of West Texas and Texas. And that is basically Tequila de la Gente in like a cute little wrapped up package with a bow. It is a handcrafted, small batch tequila made with intention, tradition, and of course, bold flavors. And why am I loving this? Because first off, for today's episode about creating space and about it not being about rushing, it's about savoring. And it's about intentional with what you consume, your time, your energy, and of course, yes, your tequila. So whether you are sipping on a blanco or reposado or holding your favorite mocktail, I want you to raise a glass with me and definitely check out Tequila de la Gente. They have one on the market right now already. They have one that should be on the market, from my understanding, by the end of this month. And if you hop on their website very, very fast, they actually still have the tasting, and I'd call it a trio, but I'm not sure if it's like 2, 3, 4, 5 different tequilas that basically originally when they were trying to say, this is the one we want to bring to market, here's some like tasting so you can try and then vote. Obviously at this point, voting is closed, but they have a couple of those sets still available you can grab. And that is great for like a nice family evening, a little chill, just some discussion, hanging out with your friends. So obviously you can raise a glass to that. Now, we are going to raise a glass of our imaginary tequila because, like I said, not having any today due to the allergies, to spacious lives, to deep breaths, to clarity over chaos, and to designing a life that actually fits. Now, I would say that my guest today, Dr. Jenna W. Clack, needs no introduction, but in case maybe this is your first time, she is obviously the brilliant co-creator of Your Digital Bliss. She is a lifestyle strategist. She is the founder of Visionary Intuitive Productions, which, of course, in case you haven't heard of that before, that is where she helps high-achieving women redefine freedom, not as hustle, but as regulated and intentional living. And of course, we've talked about it a couple times, but Your Digital Bliss is about blending lifestyle design with tech systems so you can actually enjoy your life instead of constantly managing it. And it's, geared for any kind of digital nomad that you are, whether you're a local voyager or a world wonder. So of course, welcome back, Jenna.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to hear a little recap of all the fun things that make my cheeks hurt to think about the goodness when you say like aligning with purpose and doing what you believe in. A little like tap on the hand and a reminder of, all right, girl, we're doing it. Like this is what it is. So it was a nice introduction, and I am most definitely glad to be here talking about connecting all of these great concepts. So thank you.
Yes, well, obviously, thank you for coming on today. And I know that you and I just finished up a presentation recently, and of course, it went live today. So we're recording this on Galentine's on February 13th. And of course, the Latinos in Podcasting Mini Summit is today. So I'm pretty sure by the time that this gets uploaded, you cannot watch anything live anymore. However, the nice thing about the summit that we were a part of is it will exist in infamy, and you can go in and still get like the VIP pass so you can watch everything and watch the replays. But alas, I'm sure people are tired of me talking about all the amazing things that we're doing, or maybe they're not. They're happy about it.
No, never. Honestly, I'm really glad that it'll be in infinity because they have this available. So later, even though we're excited about it right now because it's happening, it's interesting to think how time works or doesn't work, that we will be able to still access real live moments later than they're happening, which of course is happening all the time with the tech everywhere, but it is still kind of cool to be a part of. So happy Galentine's, no matter what day it is you listen to this.
That's true. And I think this really directly goes into what we're talking about because, let's say you couldn't attend the event today, right? You're creating space in some form, or let's say you're really in need of creating space. So when someone like myself or you says creating space, like, what does that actually mean? Because I think people hear that and they think, oh, I'm going to go take a mini vacation. But creating space is really something that is so much deeper than just like a mini vacation. So how would you explain that to someone?
Well, honestly, I am a super nerd about this. So, and I actually have a space creation formula built of a lot of scientific theory, and there's all that. And at the core of what I found in consulting over many, many, many moons is that when someone can really connect to a spaciousness within themselves, which can be cellular. Honestly, that's where I found the first connection, was finding cellular space for organization throughout the cell to allow regeneration. That's on that end of it. And what it does is that mirrors what's going on through your life, because everything that's happening with you in your physical representation is energetically connected to your thoughts, your environment, and the general experience that you're perceiving. So when we say create space on a more conversational level, it still connects to that same idea of there's more allowance of organization and clarity when you're aware of what is around you and when that is not crowding you. So that can be physical, right? Like a big part of how I started my personal journey was finding physical space. It can be emotional space. A lot of times that allows for every other type of space available. It can be more on a cellular level. It can be more on an energetic level, finding energetic space, finding cultural space, finding a place to exist with your own expression, finding linguistic space. So there's a lot of ways that we can express the specifics and functionally create space. However, what this feels like for people looking for that idea is a deep breath, a sense of no responsibility, guilt, heaviness, might have, need to, all of those very heavy conceptual things that carry throughout. Now, those are attached to the functional ways of looking and the more specifics. But when we generally say create space, we're looking for the feeling attached to that and making the functional connection of how I started, where I'm like, how do I define space? Let me draw it out. There is a way to apply that functionally. And so it's not necessarily removing things, although a lot of times when you redefine what aligns with you, you will find that it is less crowded than you thought before.
I think I like the point that you were talking about. One, you talked about regeneration, right? And you talked about, and for me, when I think about that, I think about if we're doing a bunch of like have tos, must do's, should do's, that there's twofold to that. I think that sometimes when we work under that, we don't create from a space of like peace. We're creating from a space.
It's not inspired action. It's
fearful. Yeah, exactly. It's not inspired action. That's the best way to say it. See, two minds think great.
It's the connection.
And it's the connection. And I was thinking the other thing about what you were just talking about is when you said, take a deep breath. Like really, you can create space at any given point in any day, in any moment, and don't get me wrong. We all want to be sitting on a beach, taking a mini vacation. That just may not be something that we can do in that exact moment. So,
claro, pero also like remembering, this is something I learned. And if you have, it's almost like, I hope you get everything you want so you can learn it's not what it is even in the situation where legitimately, if you look at my picture roll, it's like, girl, you on the beach, like it's always beautiful and views are so important to me, and manifesting in the way of just being somewhere the environment reflects is so important to me. And every moment you are with yourself, and finding the space is not something that is going to be reliant. I think that's really important. It's not reliant, like you're saying, on this one vacation or going to this specific place, or even if you're there every day, it's still a self-responsibility, a self-reliance to find that space. So when you're saying taking a breath, Kat, that's right. So freeing to say, right now I have this capability to give myself a moment. I love it.
Yes, exactly. And I know that you work, of course, with high achieving entrepreneurs, in particular, mostly women. Not all women, but mostly women. And what I see a lot, especially women, and I would say, well, I was going to say especially mothers, but in general, let's just be honest, all women, right? They get stuck in kind of this mode of like, one, self-sacrifice, two, doing everything for everybody, it's time to delegate, ladies. What do you see kind of are the biggest barriers when someone is trying to shift from that mode to like actually living, like I say actually living, but you know what I mean, living more in a peaceful existence? And, what's the first shift that you recommend that they do or guide them through?
I mean, it's really easy to say the surface advice, and then I'm going to be very real. Okay. So what's really interesting about high achieving women is still there is a feeling of not being successful enough. Because as you're saying, there are so many aspects that feel like they're pushing in on the space to be creative, to have inspired action. Because once you're successful in one area, it's almost like this well-rounded theory, which is really beautiful in theory, catches up to the expectations that you have in achieving in one area and achieving in the area of being just as caring and kind and just as self-sacrificial and showing up at all of the different places you want to show up at, and making sure you look the way you want to look and uphold the values you want to uphold and stay informed. It becomes oppressive in the space of mental clarity. So it becomes a lack of ability to see yourself for the success that you are. So I would say across the board, women don't see cool they are most of the time. And while the end game, what really is going to help switch them out of survival mode is the space for themselves. What usually helps for that is a functional explanation of what's happening in their physical responses, how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and perceiving. So finding that biochemical connection, understanding why your body, your mind is functioning in the way it is along with its environment, having that understanding and awareness takes away a lot of this responsibility of I should be overpowering thousands of years of biological evolution. So understanding that support and what support you have, allowing for functional precision is really one of the main drivers to switch over. And as a mirror to that, it's finding a resonant voice. It's finding a coach, a consultant, someone who speaks in the language that is most accessible to you and is able to make that connection. Because while the ultimate goal is that connection with yourself, finding that space, a lot of times you need, I would say, like the internal best friend on the playground to be like, back off my friend for a minute. She needs some space, and finding someone to have your back in a way that is more functional for the conversations you're going to have in your everyday life, for the decisions you're going to make in a lifestyle medicine type basis. So having that support where you can connect your emotions, your hormonal states, and your metabolism, which is how you are experiencing the world and how you're interchanging the world, with your perception. So I know that's kind of next level, but when you're high achieving and you feel like I'm not successful still, which is kind of like the still underlays, there's still some part of yourself that you're neglecting. A lot of times that's healthcare and wellness, because like you're saying, women have been conditioned to self-sacrifice in that way, to give their time, energy, attention away instead of drawing it intensively for strength. So that realization is something that is the switching point. However, applying that for each person functionally is more of a relationship-based conversation, because you have to have the trust. There's been so many studies about this. You have to have the space for trust and a safe space for expression and analyzation away from judgment, to be able to find those specific changes, switches, or shifts for yourself. So I will say that relationship, that mentorship or consultant, is probably the most powerful switch for women at that level.
No, and I was even going to add to that. I think one of the things you talked about that really hit me is when you talk about relationships, right? Because it really is so important about who you surround yourself with. Like, I know that the old adage, like when you go hang out with someone, are they draining you or are they bringing you back to life? And you really you start to think about that when you start saying, oh, why do I have these emotions? Why do I have this? And who you're interacting with and who you're spending time with becomes just so important. Like,
right.
I mean,
Your
so
energy. I'm so happy you made that connection too, Kat, because that is something that we can sometimes feel indebted, or that it's a normalized cycle of emotional sacrifice that we're not completely aware of. And finding those spaces to reclaim your attention is such a beautiful connection to make.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that, we've talked about high achieving women who have it all but feel exhausted. And, especially when you're stuck in the survival mode. But what about the female, the mujer, the person that's like, well, yeah, I know I'm in this mode, but I just don't have time for like self-care for myself. I've got clients, kids, employees. Like, what is the way that you recommend for them to integrate self-care into real life without, of course, this becoming, another, I'm checking this off my list.
Right. Well, in serio, so what I like to do is make it fun and customize a relationship. Because when you're hanging out with a friend and you're reporting and they're telling you and motivating you, and it does create a different environment. So I do think that overall, obviously your friend should have a lot of education and qualifications. However, I do think that that's a big part of it. And I do also want to throw in the background scare tactic, which is true, is like, if you don't take time for it, time will be taken for it, boo. And everything you work for that you were trying not to do, your health will make sure is reclaimed so that you pay attention to what you need to align with your values. So there is a quantum nature of aligning with your values, allowing for wellness. And over years and years and years of hormonal readings and functional labs and seeing people and consulting in deep conversations and deep history, it's a beautiful thing to know that overall, like you were saying, when your intuitive hits are going, you feel your energy is going, listen to that. And the big scary truth of this will align one way or another maybe will help to understand there's a lot of hours in the day and you probably have 30 minutes a day. So one of my most high converting, great transformation, beautiful results programs literally is 45 minutes twice a month, meeting with an expert, and then doing the lab stuff. People still struggle with giving themselves that time sometimes, but the best thing you can do is make a commitment and do it now. Your life, what's more important than that? It does perplex me and it hurts my heart. People ask me like, how do you deal with it? Because people will always come back around and want to live and want to be here. And I'd rather them do it sooner than later. My entire field is in anti-aging, regenerative, preventative. We want to live to be 208 and be hanging out, right? And what I see a lot of times is the rescue case, right? And in these situations, the rescue case was the person last year that you're talking about right now. And I learned these things through being a healthcare practitioner who knew all of these things and was still completely burnt out, crying in my closet, adrenal fatigue, even though I have all the knowledge and all the ability to do it. On that note, if you're exhausted and you don't know why you haven't checked on things, at least get yourself a salivary hormone test and check your cortisol and your base hormones. Get yourself a thyroid test that's extended so you see how this is reacting. Because a lot of times women are blaming themselves, running themselves into the ground because standard labs say they're okay and the people around say they should deal with it, and it's normalized in the culture. And so one thing I do want to, on this energetic vibe I have going here, is I want women to hear, bro, you're worth it. You are so worth it. You are the center of all existence, and you deserve to have some energetic space devoted to yourself. So pay attention, give yourself attention. We have functional ways of listening to your body, and we have time and space to listen to you. And that's the way you use the science of your spirit functionally. And I think that's available to all of us, wherever we are. That's what I'm making available here. Kat and I have a program to help do that and a level of your lifestyle. And I think that it's available. If you're not taking the time, honestly, you hear me, I want to yell and be like, boo-boo, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day. Find a space for nothing first. Nothing. Sign up for a consultant, me preferably, but really someone you trust, someone you want to build a relationship with that's not going to BS you and run you around, someone who's going to pay attention and do something functionally. And really, first, that finding 10 minutes to sit and do nothing. Kat, how is it? How is it to sit and do nothing for 10 minutes just to start? Seriously.
I think it's interesting because you asked, how is it for me to do 10 minutes? And you know me, like I struggle with wanting to like do things or be things. But what I find is that when I take the time or the space to like give myself like a breather, whether that's, you know, I like to go to the gym, I'm religious about my gym time, or, you know, sitting down. And while I won't say that, you know, I never ever watch junk TV, but it's not like something that I truly am like, oh, that's what I want to do. But as soon as I sit down and I like relax and I listen to a podcast or I do this, it just like relaxes my brain and just everything like chills out, you know, like gives me that space.
Well, and it's beautiful because scientifically the proof for productivity is so high when you do take the time to, you know, I'm going to say meditate. So, you know, when you do take that time, and biologically the effects are so nice because it's not that it fixes everything magically. It allows you to have clarity and organization, to have a more organized and spacious life design so that inspired action has somewhere to be. So you have a blank canvas to put all the paint that's being projected through the beautiful mind that you have that's interpreting things around you. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting thing to think about, that most people aren't doing it, because although that could seem really sad to me, it just feels like, oh my gosh, they're going to, though. Eventually we're going to get it. That space creates room for original creation that then propagates on that. And everything is such this novelty of what comes from us, which is, I mean, y'all know it's love, right? Like at the core of everything. So it's nice to know that there is such a capacity for that available. That makes me a little bit pumped. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing that I would really say is going back to that inspired action is if you give yourself room to breathe, even if that's like, let's say, I don't know, let's say you work 80 hours a week. I don't know what your life is like, you know, and we listen and we don't judge. But let's say you take one evening off, or you take a couple hours just to yourself to do something you enjoy. It's amazing how much more like inspired action, being able to move forward in something maybe you were stuck on before, that you have the ability to do then.
It's like literally recharging. Are you talking?
Yeah, it's literally like if we were like an electric car, it would be like, you know, people are like, oh my gosh, you have an electric car. It's so frustrating. It takes forever to fill up. And I'm like, yeah, but it's 20 minutes. I can do a meditation, listen to a podcast, get up and walk around. Like, and you know me, you know, well, I should preface for those who don't know, I live in Texas. Travel, like for me to drive an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours is kind of the norm. And it's like, I should take a break about 2.5 hours in and get out, walk around, do whatever anyways. So
no, it's funny. I'm like, no, I drove 3 hours to and from, I don't know, last weekend. And I'm like, that's it for the month. I did it. Clear. So it's funny that it's like the difference in nomad vibes, right? Kat and I honestly make space for friends who are completely opposite than you. I can't, if you were to pick apart piece by piece, there would be no space for friendship. And when we look at ourselves from a grand scheme of things, when you make a space for that, I'm grateful. So I just want to say randomly in the middle of a podcast, I'm grateful for that space.
Yeah, I love it. It's another space, because when you make space, now you have time for your amigos, the people, right, that matter. So I really want to go into something that I think there's going to be someone that's listening to this right now and is like, I feel the O word, which is overwhelmed. And I feel the B word, which is burnout. So what is the question that you would have them themselves, you know, to figure out? And what's the door, like, what is the doorway into clarity, right? For those types of things.
Oh man, this is fun. This is honestly going to be a little bit different for different types of brains. However, the doorway into clarity is that 10 minutes of sitting and doing nothing. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And then I ask the question that is different from what is practical, because what is practical means what makes sense to do. What I would say is what is functional. So when you have that space, ask yourself what works for me and what doesn't work for me. I think that switch allows you some space to answer a question. What I want most people to be aware of here is when you hear something that's not you jumping in, that's a place to tag it and say, okay, I'm aware that that judgment, that thought, that memory, that story, that narrative, whatever it is, that stopped me from what works for me. So if what works for me is not as a wellness influencer eating what is being recommended right now, do I listen to how that makes me feel and shift my views and shift the way that I'm showing up? And if that's something that's a problem for me. So see, it's all this space, right? What I would say the big switches in functionality there is having an outside perspective that has your goals in mind, not their goals, which is something to look out for, not their goals, but who has your goals in mind that can say functionally what to do with what you find in that space. But the switch is that space to ask yourself what's functional for me, what is not functional for me, what's really working. And then when you tag the little bits of awareness along there, that's just more information to feed into your next decision. Really, I think the space is the awareness between yourself and yourself. So seeing yourself without the judgment, without the story, without the, I immediately feel like I should have done something better. I could have done this, that type of vibe. And I think that those questions about functionality really get to the core of it.
No, I think that really goes on to the thought process of thinking, is what I'm doing, like whether it's pushing yourself, am I honoring myself? Like, is this honoring, what my goal is? Is this honoring the life that I want to live? Like, and I think we can speak to this. There are times in life where maybe during a launch, maybe during something, you need to maybe go a tad bit out of alignment, but that's not sustainable for months and months and months. Right. And so I think that it comes back to the fact that we have to think about these things through kind of the two lenses, right? You have to think about these through logic and productivity, but you also need to trust your intuition. So what would your recommendation be? Like, especially when making big life decisions, like how do you differentiate between like fear and intuition and logic and, going with the flow?
So you're always going to get it a little bit wrong. So don't ever, I think that's the first part. When we talk about like expectations, it makes it a little bit easier to be like, I'm not going to get it 100% right? Like that takes a lot off of it. However, preparation for me is the answer to that, right? Preparation is the answer. And what preparation is in scientific terms is building your allostatic load or your cushion or your availability to respond. And that is where we can relate space into like this actual feeling of having a cushion, having space, having availability to, like you said, when you swing one way, when you're going really hard in one direction, to not hit the wall, right? So the preparation that I see most people miss, and again, as I say this, I always thought I was just like a very normal person. And as I say it out loud, even now, without knowing any more details, you can hear by my laugh, it's not common that everyone has a personal mission statement from a young age that they then refine. However, I think that's probably one of the core things that helps keep decisions easy and aligned, that even when you swing to one side or another, you're able to find the common value to draw you back into what's really connected with who you are, who you decided that you are, who you identified with. And so a personal mission statement is formed around chosen values and how you see those values moving forward and attaching to your own narrative. I believe that having your own narrative is probably one of the, as I'm saying it now, like I can feel it in my chest. I don't think I've ever said this before. I believe that having your own narrative is probably one of the most important factors factors to be able to move forward energetically in a functional way that aligns with the lifestyle that you are imagining. Instead of falling into this genie trap of, I want it to look like that, so I'll pick something someone else created, but I don't know what's behind the door. And that's what happens a lot, is that we see people moving towards a goal that has not been internally anchored. So, wow, I don't know who's listening to this podcast, but that was just a drop I didn't know was going to happen. Like, that is true, though. I feel like it's the strongest thing about me, if I'm to really think about it, is I have a very strong internal narrative that I feed my own intention and attention to. When I find myself being distracted, I remind myself that my most important and valuable asset is my focused attention. And that's true biologically, energetically, every freaking way you can look at it, giving the intention inwardly. So when we say 10 minutes, it really needs to be 10 hours, boo. However, giving yourself that start helps you to trust that that's a good investment. We've been sold that the investment is outside of ourselves. The investment is inside of ourselves. When you're traveling, you're taking you with you, okay? Everything else might not make it, but you're going to be there with you. So finding that clarity and leaning into your intuition is a practice, but the practice has somewhere to sit when you have a personal mission statement. I feel like that's something that is a little key that's not a little door, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, and I think that really, a lot of the decisions that you make or that you have in front of you is, if you can go back and you know yourself, which as cheesy as that sounds, then, even if, let's say, sometimes we're going to make the wrong decision and we're going to fail at stuff, you're going to be like, I made the best decision I could with the information that I had. And, what do we always say? Everything in life is either a lesson or a blessing, or a blessing, I guess, is to say it fully out. But,
You know how many times you've looked back, you don't even like to admit it, and you're like, oh, that's why. I know exactly. And you get to play that move where you're in a different space, and we all have the availability. It's a game we get to play. And I think that when we look at it that way, it also makes it a lot more fun.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of fun and speaking of, we're obviously talking about creating space, but what are some of the things that you recommend to people that they can do on like a daily basis to help maintain, that mental, emotional, and energetic balance, especially during growth seasons, or I'm gonna even push it a little bit during non-growth seasons, because we all, like, let's be honest, life kind of has some ups and downs,
right?
So, and I was thinking that sometimes, like, what is it when people say, like, well, yeah, if we didn't have like we didn't have the dip, we wouldn't be so happy about this right here. And so, like, growth obviously can be beautiful, but at the same time, sometimes it can be very destabilizing to experience those.
I will once again, what you said was cheesy and it's exactly accurate, Kat, is knowing yourself helps a lot in that point, because people are going to have a lot of different ways of dealing with it. And the first thing I would say is nothing you do to deal with something that's happening to you is wrong. It's what is happening in that moment. However, in that moment is the perfect time to assess the surrounding conditions in which that occurred. So when you're in the downtime, the challenging time, it's almost like an illumination. I mean, right now we're going through a very difficult time in the world. And although that is very friction heavy, it's damaging, right? It's energy consuming. There's also a nice twist of the things that were hidden are brought to the light. And we're able to, with more confidence and more clarity and more space, shift in the direction that we collectively decide. Now, what's beautiful about this on a personal level is you ain't got to count on no one else, right? So when you're in that downtime and you have the ability to have awareness, that's where it's most important to bolster your strength. This is a journaling time. This is a reflection time. This is a let it all out without judgment time. This is an identification for clarity time. This is I finally got to the bottom of what's in this hole, and I'm going to be able to clean it all the way out and decide what's in here next, right? And so instead of moving away from a depression as like a problem and something you need to push out, letting yourself fall into the jumping off point, right? And I will say that the goal is to make those shifts less and less dramatic. That's homeostasis. You're never going to be a stable, every day is the same influencer up with my daily routine at this time stamp. That is a digital timeline. That is not an analog, literal, living, biological, in vivo type of thing, right? And there is such a beauty in allowing the space to exist, that you have this downtime and you think, oh, I'm a dork, so I'm going to tell you this is really true. When I have a downtime and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to I'm going to eat the marshmallows. I'm going to sit on the couch. I'm going to journal. I'm going to cry. And then in an hour, I'm going to move. I'm going to get in the sunshine. I'm going to journal some more. I'm going to think about all of the things that I've been allowing, the patterns that I haven't seen, the places. And I'm going to get committed that this isn't how I want to feel. And I have a choice to change that feeling when I want to, not before I'm ready to, not before I've gotten the patterns out. So I think in depression, it's giving yourself a chance to really bend your knees and get ready to jump. Get yourself steady in what you're seeing, okay? And then remember, the longer you sit in it, the harder it is to get out. So just keep that in mind, bro. Just do journaling quickly, move on. Music, movement, outside, connecting with the earth. If you're a people person. If you're not, don't people person. I like to go to classes with people I don't talk to, but I'm in a community, and then I can be around people. Pure Barre was this plug is a great place to really connect on that level. So then get into thinking about what were the patterns that I didn't like that got me there, and having that little bit of inspired action and self-discipline to say, I care more about how I feel. I care more about the choices I'm making for myself than the momentum and the pattern that I'm currently in. That's important. Now, that's where I ended up coming in, because if you have metabolically or nutritionally, if you have something going on that's in your way, you need to find that out. That's important. That's part of knowing yourself. And in general, writing those low points out as benefits, as knowledge enhancing points, as jumping points. And when you're in those high points and everything's going and you don't have a space, the best thing you can do is legitimately 5 minutes of timered silence, just legitimate all the way silence, or a walk by yourself with no music, nothing going on, because allowing literally that space away from input is where the input gets organized. So I think I answered the question.
I think one of the things that when you talked at the very end about allowing input, about allowing space, is if your brain is noisy, which, I mean, you and I know we're both very neurospicy type people. Like our brains can get very, very noisy. And so I always laugh, because inevitably, well, I say laugh, I put on let's say it's an hour-long meditation. I make it 20 minutes through and then I'm asleep. And I still feel like somehow subconsciously, whatever they're saying or whatever I'm trying to meditate is getting through, but it allows my brain to relax, just to fully relax.
I hear that. Well, that there's nothing wrong with that. And because you said that, on the flip side, if what does it for you, which does it for me, is weirdly this is so funny. I'm going to say, public transport with my earphones on hip hop as loud as possibly can be for hours is like a reset for me. And knowing that about yourself is not something that you know without finding the experience and searching for it. So that's going to be highly specific. However, finding those things it's kind of like, it's like the adventure, the treasures of life, right? As we find these little things that work for us along the way. I love it. And we can collect them together.
Exactly. And one of the things, like sometimes when you have this space, and this very much goes along with a part of the mini summit that we were a part of, because it's about loving your voice, right? And sometimes when your brain gets quiet and you have that space, some of us, we, instead of like, I don't want to say living light, but instead of like hugging and giving ourselves grace and doing those things, we're so hard on ourselves. And when you are in that space, or you've gone through a hard moment, or you've gone through growth, which like we were just talking about can be very destabilizing, you know, what are the recommendations that you make if someone's inner voice and they're like is an inner critic, right? Like how do you get off that train, so to speak?
First of all, don't be mad at yourself again for doing it, because I have all of the training and the knowledge and all of the background in the world. And there are still times where there is just a very loud, repetitive, you are not making it. This is your fault. You're the worst, worse than everyone. You shouldn't be here. That is something that is not mine. Okay. And I think I want everyone to hear your thoughts are not yours. You're a receiver for what you accept or not. Right. And so that is a very comforting thought when you don't want to do anything else. When you do feel like there's too much going on, it's comforting to think I wouldn't be able, this is me. So just realizing that it's not as negative as a thought as it sounds. So don't judge yourself for feeling it. It's a protective thought. Anything you're doing that you're speaking to yourself is some form of trying to protect you from something else. So allowing that took me a long time. Like, why am I thinking? I shouldn't even be thinking this. I feel bad that I'm thinking it. Now I'm guilty that I'm thinking that I'm thinking. So first of all, remove that part of it. The second part, which was really, really difficult for me, is to realize that it's not what's making you successful. It's not really helping you to be super hard on yourself and hard on other people and expect them to be the same as you, because that's like an offshoot that happens when you talk to yourself critically. Realizing that it doesn't help you and it's not helpful. It's just kind of stupid to be mean to yourself. And it's a funny roundabout way of insulting you to stop insulting yourself. But really, it doesn't make sense. It's not useful. And when it happens, instead of judging and being that way, be like, wow, that's crazy. That's interesting, and observe it and say, it's interesting that I'm that mean to myself. What happened for me is I took a little like 5-minute LinkedIn course like 3 years ago on a whim. It was like self-compassion. I was like, girl, I've been doing all this work, did that work, did the breath work, did the medicine work, did the journey work, did know how my emotion, just something about giving yourself space to say like, man, that's been tough and you really did it. You made it through this and you are doing great, like there's something, I don't know if it's Southern cultural beauty pageant, Christian school, I don't know what it is, but inside me, when I'm nice to myself like that, I'm always like, ugh, like gross. Like, and when I started doing that practice, it was a 5-minute LinkedIn, I was bawling my eyes out because I was like, I am so hard on myself. And I think that what I would want to do to comfort everyone is to realize that letting that part of yourself go doesn't change anything else. It just has that mean voice to stop doing that to you. And so really it's a practice of realizing, first of all, none of my thoughts are my own. We're all out here co-creating. It's all out here. And so if I'm tuned into that and I don't want to continue to tune into it, I can learn to say, cool, it was useful at one time, not for me now. I'm severing the relationship. Just if I had someone else talk to me like that, I wouldn't let them be in my face. Not happening. And again, it's kind of like with the intuition thing. I'd love to tell you, you're going to do it and then you're going to know. However, as we do know, it's a practice, and you get better for the game every time you go to practice. So
I couldn't agree more. And the only thing that I would add to what you were talking about is, which I think goes very similar along the lines, and it's a practice. And you know me, I just say where I got it from. So I was listening to a Gabby Bernstein discussion once, and it was like, when you have one of those thoughts, take the thought and be like, I think I'm going to think a better thought. Like, just, you're not putting judgment on the thought. You're not saying this is a bad thought. You're not saying this. You're just like, maybe a better thought,
Not for me. I don't like those shoes.
I don't like those shoes. Not for me right now. Like, this is what I want,
Dude, and that makes it kind of more exciting, because I love this idea of shopping for thoughts, right? And so you can look. I think people are afraid to look at all the thoughts because they are afraid it's going to accidentally end up in their bag, right? But you can look at all of the thoughts and all of the perspectives and decide, I want those earrings. I want that eyeshadow. And so it kind of like creates a persona of the things that are true for you. And I think that's why building a personal mission statement helps so much, is because it gives you a picture of what your person would buy from the thought world. This is like such a cute app. Like, someone needs to make this. I can't do it, but someone should make the thought buying app. Like, what thoughts will I select today? It'll be like an outfit.
I know. It's funny that you say that, because one of the things that, like, first off, there are some people in my life that we might call them a little toxic, right? But, well, we're going to call them little. They are. One of the things that I like to do, and I say this with like, people are going to be like, what? Since this is Tech and Tequila, let's be honest. I like to take, if they send me a negative, not kind text message, I put it in Chat GPT, and I'm like, make this nice. Like, make this kind and compassionate. And, and I find that sometimes,
what the kind part was, surely they didn't mean it like that. They must have meant to say, what a beautiful narrative, using a tech in the middle. Yes, Kat. Yes.
That's right. Because you can, like, it's not going to delineate that obviously we have to deal with that whole situation at some point, but it at least makes it where maybe there is a sliver of like something that they really wanted to tell you that didn't come across in the way that it really, I mean, we all, let's be honest, we're going to give ourselves, we're humans. Sometimes we fly off the handle. Sometimes we say things that maybe we don't want to say, or maybe it's like, it's like that meme that's like, I'm healed and all that, but don't get it wrong. I will show up as like,
No, my problem is I've never regretted. I'll say everything that I mean to say. And I don't say anything that's not nice unless, like, is it constructive, blah, blah, blah. And when there is a time that is the right time, I have so many things that I've been waiting to say, that I've been holding in order in a very beautifully transcripted manner. That is terrifying to the other party. So there's that. I do think that finding the space for yourself allows it's kind of like people have boundaries that are too close built in, right? So like when you build the boundary right in front of your face, you don't have a yard, you can't run around, you're not enjoying yourself. If you build a boundary, you build it far out and you make a gate and you have the drawbridge combo, then that's the way that you can more lovingly interact with whatever kind of energies are in the extended field. And so I think as a digital nomad, especially being a world wanderer, it's going to be a very different experience than being a local voyager, just because of the environment of community and how you're connecting. So I think that finding boundaries wherever you are creates the space. So really, it's having a clear boundary that allows for the space you're creating, whether that be what I will and won't allow in my house. We started with Marie Kondo's this whole journey. So when you ask, is it physical, is it mental? I'm like, girl, it started because my mother-in-law was like, here's the book to clean your house. Like it was beautiful and so much stuff, And I think I discussed with you the other day, we've gotten rid of all of our things. We had an estate sale. We got rid of them all again in Costa Rica. We got them all again in Austin years later. And we've gotten rid of our things, everything we had multiple times, 3-4 times over, and we still have stuff. Same thing with your body, with your emotions. I think we're afraid that we hold on to our creativity. We don't let it out because what if I don't have another idea? What if someone takes this idea? Girl, there's another one, okay? Like we hold on to our relationships. There's so many people who want to love us and want to be in a relationship with us. We want to hold on to our physical space. There's so many places to see, and this is one of them. Maybe it's for you. Your environment will let you know. And it just feels like so much more inspiring to make the connection of having space, rather than I can't because I have to, get rid of my stuff in storage. I can't because I have to take care of my car that I bought here, which is physical stuff. Now, what about I can't because I don't want to be in distance to this relationship that I have. I can't because I'm tied into an identity that I have here. I have to show up for this specific role. And I feel like the world will fall apart if I don't show up for that role. But that's not even who I am. There's so many things that when you say like high achieving, it's high achieving to who? And do I really feel connected to who I am? And as part of this bigger thing that we really can't define. And I think that that's kind of it seems like a huge conversation. I think this is where people are. What are we doing here? Where can we really show up and experience and regenerate life? So I'm really excited about this whole boundary thing. So what do you feel has been the most helpful thing for you, Kat, in creating that space? Because I know you've been able to create more space, and it wasn't an all-in-one thing. It's been a finding the space thing. So what do you think is the most helpful thing for you?
So I'm going to sound super cheesy because I'm going to say number one is giving myself grace, which means that means when you talked about holding the boundary, like right in front of your face, like I'm definitely somebody who, and I don't want to say like it's an all or nothing, right? Like am I going 100 and 20 miles per hour, or I'm just like exhausted, the whole the roadrunner thing. And so for me, it's been fine. Like I said, holding the boundary here, building the yard, and then realizing that kind of like somewhere in between is where we really need to be, right? Mm-hmm. We need to have that drawbridge. We need to have the ability to close it, and the thing about space is that I'm huge in tech. So it's like, how can I utilize my tech to create space? Which I think leads to like, if you are a business owner and entrepreneur, when you are putting SOPs, like standard operating procedures in place, some of the things that I want to say are no brainers, but things that have really helped me is like having an automatic out of office message that says, if this is a non-emergency, we will get back within so-and-so time, because otherwise you're being very reactive. I mean, it's kind of those kinds of things are what I think about.
No, I love that, because I think that as you say it, I'm like, oh, of course. And that's not something, I think that's what's really nice about having your digital bliss. Honestly, guys, it was genius because we just happen to be friends, but having different perspectives like this is what allows you to have space in all of the worlds that we're living in this modern situation of having your lifestyle be so intertwined with tech. So I love that, Kat. I mean, and as you say it, obvio, of course, those systems are so important, right?
No, and I think for anyone listening today, like you've made some great points. I talk about what works for me. And the thing is, what I always like if I'm scrolling or if I'm looking, is listening to other people talk about ways and what works for them. Because we all know that person that's like, I get up at 4:30 in the morning and these are the things I do and I'm in bed by like 8. That is not going to work for me, very transparently. That is not within my vibe. I am definitely like a night owl, like 4:30 in the morning. Yes, I have done it sometimes, but it's not like my thing. But I think it goes back to that knowing yourself, like saying, this is what works for me. So taking all these great ideas, taking all these, I was going to use the word protocols, but like different things that you can use
guidelines.
and guidelines, and really making them what works best for you is huge.
It makes me really excited to know that just the message is out there. What everyone chooses to do with it, is up to them. And I think that what's really important, especially for people who kind of like go hard or go home, is to remember that those 1% changes, the 1% of shifted focus can really create so much more sustainable direction than going hard, going home every time, and then finding that place for yourself, because we need all of us. Wherever you are is where you are meant to be right now. And finding how that can be more joyful and regenerative for you, it is kind of like the goal of Cat in Tech, me in lifestyle, and us in your digital bliss. It seems like these are all very different worlds, and really that's what we're delivering, is this message of autonomy. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I could not think of a better point to end on, because really we've gone over all these things. We've talked about creating space, you know, like I keep saying, I'm not sure exactly when this is going to like launch itself into the world and people are going to be listening, but you know, obviously take advantage, of course, of hashtag your digital bliss. We absolutely love that. But the other thing is, if you just want like kind of a taste and you're like, I like this, but I want to learn more, you know, check out the Latinos in Podcasting mini summit. And, you know, I'm going to be honest, like we're sitting here at an hour, and traditionally most of my podcast is like 30, 45 minutes, you know, and I am telling you, I could talk with Jenna for hours and hours and hours. Right. But what I really love about this conversation, about discussing this, especially since I do know so many amazing high achieving people, is that you can utilize your tech, you can utilize these different skill sets that you build through learning to create space, even, which we kind of spoke about, if the world is chaotic around you. You know, if you're getting all this like input constantly, you know, and I want you really to think like your calendar should create space, your automation should create space, your system should create space. And guess what? If they don't, that is not a productivity issue. That's a design issue. I mean, and let's be honest, burnout is not a badge, ladies. I want you to know that. It's not a badge. It really is a design flow. So when I, you know, with that being said, is there any like parting words of wisdom or parting thoughts that you would like for the audience to hear?
To be truly resilient and feel very fulfilled, the best thing you can do is be truly functional with the spirit that is within you. Science gives us some great patterns to observe that, and we can know for sure how to connect to one another and to create well-being. And creating well-being for yourself is one of the best ways you can really make a lasting impact on the world, no matter what your purpose is. And we need all of you lights, love-centered persons of the world. We need you to give yourself the intentional attention inwards to draw that strength, to draw that resilience, create an allostatic load, create space and capacity for the greatness that is certain to follow. So I feel like it's a huge responsibility, and we have everything available. It's just the choice for you to understand you're the fucking coolest. You're here for a bigger purpose than you can imagine. So finding that clarity and stepping into it is the next step. We expect you to do it. Mic drop.
Yes, I love it. Mic drop. So of course, familia, if you take one thing from today's episode, be that, you know, we love all the light and everything that you bring to the table, to this, you know, mundo, to this world. you're obviously allowed to build a life that fits you. You know, we talk a lot about having external things going on, but when you're building your life, you're not building it to impress other people, to prove something. You don't want it to run you into the ground. You have the capability to create space, and that space for creativity, space for rest, space for joy. I mean, I would not be doing my due diligence if I did not tell you that the Bad Bunny halftime show brought me a great deal of joy, and I felt joy on screen and joy around me. Of course, space for motherhood. Hey, I love it. Space for leadership, and of course, space for tequila. So, you know, with that being said, of course, you can find Dr. Jenna W. Clack online through Visionary Intuitive Productions. And can you remind me, what are your, like, I would say, what is the most active handle that you have, or platform? Is it like Instagram? Is it TikTok? Where do you find yourself at mostly?
It's probably going to be Instagram most of the time. And Visionary Intuitive Productions has a handle. And there's also a persona, which is JW1, JDUBYAONE. That's more of my persona. It's super fun. But Visionary Intuitive Productions on Instagram. And like you said, we have a wonderful website that has a ton of info there.
I love it. I love it. You have a ton of blog posts. You have a ton of information. And of course, there's ways to connect and consult with Jenna. So of course, you know, as the podcast host for Tech and Tequila, if today's episode resonated with you, always remember, like, subscribe, share with a friend, you know, and of course, explore #YourDigitalBliss, because you do not need more hustle. You need more alignment. And until the next time, stay savvy, stay sovereign, and of course, sip intentionally. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Tech and Tequila. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. To stay updated about all things tech and more, don't forget to visit us at our website, shelbyts.com. If you loved what you heard, remember to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast. Your 5-star ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help us to reach more listeners just like you. So muchas gracias again for joining us with Tech and Tequila. Thank you so much. You learned a lot about tech, and maybe you had a nice drink of tequila.